Good morning. Welcome to all of you. We're so glad that you're here. This is the beginning of the first UAPB conference on the opioid drugs. And my name is Cynthia Troutman. I'm the interim director of the Graduate Addiction Studies program here at the campus. And we are thrilled to be able to bring to you experts in this area from Arkansas. And we hope you enjoy yourself today. This is for you. This is for the students, the staff, and the faculty of UAPB. And a lot of people have dedicated time to come and bring us good information, so I hope you thoroughly enjoy your learning experience today. And so to bring us welcomes and greetings, I'll introduce our Chancellor, Dr. Lawrence B. Alexander.
Thank you, Dr. Troutman. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So happy to see you here this morning, and thank you for coming out and for this very important event. It's an important event because this is a critical issue that is on the agenda. The opioid epidemic, if you haven't heard about it, you haven't been alive, because we've all heard about how it is ravaging communities and how this addiction has led to an epidemic, and how this epidemic is leading to illness and death. We'd like to learn more about it today. We'd like to challenge all of us to dedicate more time and more effort to learning in this community of learning what the real questions are, what the issues are, and how we can be helpful to the solution. How we as a university can be activated to bring about solutions within our communities and within the community at large within the state of Arkansas. I'd like to especially thank all of our guests who've come today to share with us. I understand we have guests from the State Health Department. We've got the Drug Czar. We've got Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we are really delighted to have all of you share with us, members of the health department, staff. Thank you for taking out the time to come and share with us at our university, to share with our faculty and our students your expertise on this issue. We are an institution here at UAPB whose mission is teaching, research, service, and outreach. And I believe that mission of teaching, research, service, and outreach, we can, through each and every prong of that mission, touch on this epidemic and have an impact from this campus. And it is part of my vision for this university that is what we would like to see. I have been pushing since I arrived a research agenda for our university. We have a number of researchers. We have students who are engaged in research. We have students who have a desire to learn through research experiences. And I want to challenge our university community to do all they can in their teaching functions, in their research functions, to engage through the grant and grant-making process. Those federal dollars in particular that can be drawn down to assist and help advance this mission within the state of Arkansas for the benefit of all Arkansans. So on that note, I'd like to welcome you and thank you and thank Dr. Troutman in particular and the Addiction Studies program for putting on this program, and thank all of you for your attendance today.
My name is Lillian Arnold. I'm a student in the Graduate Addiction Studies program. I would like to introduce to you The Arkansas State Drug Director, Kurt Lane, he was appointed by Governor Asa Hutchinson on August 7, 2017. Previously to this, Director Lane served as the Chief of Police for the city of Benton, Arkansas. Director Lane began his law enforcement career in 1982. In 1986, he went to work for the Pulaski County Sheriff's Department for 22 years, rising to the rank of captain. In January of 2009, Director Lane retired from Pulaski County Sheriff's Department as the Investigation Division Commander and was appointed the Chief of Police of the Benton Police Department until his retirement in August 2017. He has attended the University of Virginia and the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. He is a graduate of the Arkansas Law Enforcement Academy, the Drug Enforcement Administration's Drug Commanders Academy, FBI LEADA, and the FBI National Academy 197th Section. He has served on the board of the Criminal Justice Institute and represented Arkansas for the Regional Organized Crime Information Center. He also was the chairman for the Arkansas Chiefs Association Legislative Committee. Director Lane currently serves as the chairperson of the Arkansas Alcohol and Drug Coordinating Council and serves on the Arkansas Prescription Monitoring Program Advisory Board and the National Community Anti-Drug Coalition of America. Director Lane is an active member of the Arkansas State Working Group for Prescription Drug Abuse Prevention, and he received the 2012 Maria Interfaith Leadership Award for his work in this area. Let's give a warm welcome to Director Kurt Lane.
Thank you and good morning. So I want to start off by saying Boeing 737 MAX jet. How many are familiar with that issue that's going on with the Boeing 730 MAX jet? So last year in the summer, one crashed in Ethiopia, Ethiopian airline Boeing 737 MAX jet, had about 182 people on board, all of which perished. In a matter of days, they found out that another jet, similar in capacity, Boeing 737 MAX jet, crashed not far from there with 167 people on board. In the days to come after that, now a year later, they grounded that airline. They won't let those airlines fly until they work out those problems that they're having with those airlines and the electronic systems that they have in those airlines. And I tell you this because in 2017, 192 people a day died from an overdose. Last year, we improved to 188 people a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But nobody's shutting this airline down. Although we're reducing the amount of people we're losing per day, but nobody's shutting the airline down. So I say that when we look at these numbers, and you're going to see a lot of numbers because I'm a numbers person, that it's staggering that we're losing that many people. But what is a number? A number is a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, an uncle, a neighbor, a friend, a grandparent, and the list goes on. These are people that we're losing every day right here in the United States. For the last 3 years in the United States, for the first time since the early 1900s, like 1913, the life expectancy for a U.S. citizen, whether it be male or female, has decreased. With all the technology that we have, with all the medical capacity that we have, we are going backwards in the length of time somebody lives in the United States. And it's due to overdose, and it's due to suicide. And a lot of times they run hand in hand because somebody that's battling substance use disorder often has hopelessness and helplessness that leads them to committing suicide. So it's attributed to the overdose rate, to the substance use disorder that we were battling, and it's increasing over the capacity. As we move forward, you'll see this slide, the increase in babies exposed to opioids during pregnancy, known as neonatal abstinence syndrome. In an acronym crazy environment that I am, we call it NAS. In Arkansas, thank you. In Arkansas, in 2000, we were steady at a 0.02 babies for every 1,000 babies born. 0.02 of every 1,000 babies born had neonatal abstinence syndrome. But today, we're the fastest increasing state in the nation at 4.8 of every 1,000 babies born have neonatal abstinence syndrome. And why is that impactful? Because a normal birth costs $4,400. A neonatal abstinence birth costs $44,000 per. And so you'll see where that impacts. But you know, money isn't everything in this. The impact to that child, the impact to that family, the life expectancy of that child, and what that child will have to face in the future because the birth mother decided to use opioids during her pregnancy. Increase in children entering foster care. Our number one issue that we're having for taking kids away from their family is neglect due to substance use disorder, whether it be methamphetamine, whether it be opioids, whether it be marijuana, or some type of substance use disorder leads to that issue. And neglect is what harms that child. And because of IV use from opioids, from prescription opioids, moving into heroin and fentanyl, we now see that the increase of hepatitis C and HIV because of the use of a needle. We're seeing those impacts now in our communities throughout the state. Our economy, we go back to money, $115 billion in 2017 attributed to dealing with substance use disorder and opioid dependence. 11.4 million Americans in 2017 were estimated as misusing opioids, and a total of about 20 million people involved in substance use disorder in one fashion or the other, but the greatest majority of it to the opioids. And you can see how this impacts everything that we do. You can see over 70,000 drug overdose deaths in 2017. That was that 192 people a day number that I gave you. And 2/3 of that was related to heroin and fentanyl. So you break this down, everybody says, well, this is all about the illicit opioids. But if you look at some of these numbers in there, prescription opioids are a contributing factor of the direction that it goes. Because a lot of times it's about the economics of addiction, as I call it. People start off maybe with a simple medical procedure and they get dependent upon the opioids that they were prescribed, and it leads them into behavior because the way it rewires your brain. And so moving forward with that, next thing you know, they're trying to get in somebody else's medicine cabinet, they're finding pills, they're passing false scripts, and they move forward because they can't afford their addiction, and we'll talk more about it, and they move to street drugs like heroin and fentanyl that's on our streets. But as you can see, 6.3 million RX hydrocodone users in our country right now as we deal with that. And hydrocodone is our highest prescription drug of abuse. 3 out of 4 people that get involved with heroin and fentanyl started by misusing prescription drugs. And so that's staggering on where it's going, and it lays that basis. Just like alcohol can be a gateway or marijuana can be a gateway, prescription drugs can be that gateway. And we see it so often, especially from our people in recovery that tell us their stories of how they started from A and ended up at Z. A lot of times marijuana, prescription drugs, and alcohol are those gateways that led them down that path. And Arkansas is the number 2 prescribing state in the nation, not just last year, but for the last 3 years. And actually, we've been in the top 10 for about 11 years. So what does this mean? So if you look at those numbers in 2015, 117.7 opioid prescriptions for every 100 people. That's amazing. There's more opioid prescriptions than we have people in our state. We're at about 3.1 million people in our state, and during some of that time period, we were prescribing 250 million opioid pills into a population of 3.1 million. We've since come down with a lot of work that we're doing, a lot of education, to about 180 million pills at a rate of 102.1 just last year, prescriptions for every 100 people. Now, why is this significant? Well, a couple of reasons. You see the bottom line down there is the national average, and we are the high part of the national average, and the national average is 58.7. So that's nationally, every other state nationally combined, and the average is 58.7 opioid prescriptions for every 100 people. So we are almost twice the national average as a state. And this is very significant in the fact that drug cartels are billion-dollar corporations. They hire people to help them sell and market their goods. They hire people to help and buy technology to keep people from interfering in their drug business, because selling drugs and drug dealing is all about money. It's not about health and welfare. It's not about anything good. It's about making money for their drug cartels. So it's just good business for these marketing people to understand trends, marketing trends, to do good business. And while methamphetamine is our strongest drug of abuse in our state, it's just good business to understand the marketing trends of a highly opioid dependent population like Arkansas has. And I say we're number 2, thank God for Alabama, they're number 1. But in those 2 states, Alabama and Arkansas, we've seen significant increases in the last 3 or 4 years of the distribution of heroin and now fentanyl from the Mexican cartels, because it's just good business to put those into highly opioid dependent populations. So let's break this down by county. And here's your opioid prescribing by county. And you can see that some counties are extremely high. All of them are above the national average. A lot of them are above the state average. But look at Poinsett County, and I'll throw Poinsett under the bus. I think 164, almost 3 times the national average of what they're prescribing in that county. So it's easy to point a finger at a doctor, but we shouldn't do that, because really the result of this issue is really all of our responsibility. It took all of us to create it, either by looking the other way or not doing the right thing, and allow these things to go on. And quite simply, a lot of times, it could be that Poinsett County has an extremely high older population that needs opioids. Or it could mean that we have overprescribing that's going on in those counties, or some type of distribution issue that's going on in those counties. But the red flag is that we need to look into it stronger and try to deal with that. I can tell you that 2 years ago, to the west, Sebastian County was one of our worst counties in the state at almost 180 opioid prescriptions for every 100 people. We put a lot of intensive work into Sebastian County, and I'm proud to see their rate come down. But it took buy-in from everybody. It took buy-in from the whole community to make a change. For the first time in our state's history, autopsies at our state crime lab for overdoses are exceeding homicides. And some of these numbers are misleading, but they're really the bottom line numbers that we're seeing in our state. This is a chart that shows the overdose types, and the top line that you see are methamphetamine. The middle line that you see, their second highest line, is synthetic drugs like tramadol and fentanyl, and then the bottom line, or excuse me, fentanyl and heroin, and then the bottom line, the lowest number at the end, is actual prescription drug overdoses. So we look at overdose deaths. And so on the left side of that screen, you'll see overdose deaths that occurred in each county in 2017 and where they're at in 2018. And so what's alarming about this is we show an increase of 3.3%, while the rest of the country collectively has dropped 3.4%. But Arkansas is still climbing because Arkansas is about 3 to 4 years behind the rest of the country in different trends, either in actively engaging or dealing or actually having to deal with certain type drugs that are coming in. And it's bothersome because fentanyl in our state is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And in a time where it's increasing the amount of fentanyl that we're seeing in our state, which is extremely deadly. But we got to look at these bottom numbers because these are the bottom numbers because we only have about 50 of the 75 coroners that are on board with reporting properly. And so there's 25 coroners that don't report deaths properly, and that really gives us a bad edge in trying to deal with this. And why is that? Because we have to compete for every dollar that we get. And not having good statistics and not having accurate statistics puts us in a non-competitive issue. We recently lost out on some grants because we didn't have good numbers to really show the effect of where it's going. And you may have heard of lawsuits that have been filed by the AG's office in our cities and counties. And as that goes forward, and we're looking very promising for settlements, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to prove what damage you have to your county. And if it's not being reported properly or underreported, then it could mean that settlement dollars that could go into the resolve of helping families, helping treatment, helping recovery, will not be at its potential where it should be. And most importantly, when we do get dollars, and we use the formulas of where these problems are occurring in our state and in those counties, and trying to put those dollars into those counties, we can't effectively put the dollars where they're really needed because we don't have accurate information. And a lot of that has to do with hurdles and bureaucracies that we've built up over the years about the way we've always done business, and a non-willingness to change. And it's difficult to do, and I deal with coroners, and in coroners in our state, you only have to be 18, not a felon, and with no medical experience, and you can be voted in as a coroner. And a lot of times in our rural counties, they are the undertaker or the funeral home director and have to live in those communities with those families. And there's such a strong stigma about substance use disorder or addiction and all those bad words that are out there, that a lot of times the family, in fear of the stigma, doesn't want little Johnny's death to look like an overdose. And so they go forward and they ask the coroner not to report it as an overdose. Can you just list it as natural? And a lot of times it happens. And because of that, it's not recorded the way it should be. And because of that, it's underreported. I would venture to guess that our numbers aren't 426 for last year. It's probably 35% higher than that. And because of all the other trends that we fall in line with. And that's where I think our number is. One of the problems we have is the way our prescribing is. And we're the #1 state in the nation in this chart for being prescribed an opioid for a simple ankle sprain by the emergency department. 40% of the time, our doctors during this time period prescribed an opioid for a simple ankle sprain, which led a lot of people into that destructive path. Look at our prescription drugs by class. Opioids, number of prescriptions over 3 million, 3.2 million, 186 million pills sold just in 2018 alone. And then you add on your benzodiazepines, your stimulants, and everything else that mixes into the mix. It's really remarkable, and this number is down from the years before. We've really done some good work to bring it down. It still has a long ways to go, but we're down 70 million pills just in the opioid category from where we were the year before. And then you break it down, the opioids, you break it down even further, and you see an amount of 76 million hydrocodone into a population of 3.2 million. You know, I don't know about you, but I didn't get any hydrocodone last year. Somebody did. United States makes up 5% of the world's population, uses 40% of the pharmaceuticals, and 99% of the hydrocodone in the world. And this is that circle of addiction that I talk about, where people may start off with hydrocodone, maybe to get high, maybe to get treated for a medical deal. Opioids weren't made when they were designed for long-term use. They were made to deal with severe pain. And because it builds tolerances in your body, and the more you build up that tolerance, the more you have to take to get that effect of where you are, whether to get high, whether to get treated for your pain, but it builds that effect. And because of that building, you become dependent on it. And a lot of times it moves that circle of addiction, or what I call the economics of addiction, because it all moves forward. And so, like I said, a lot of people turn to other people's medicine cabinets. They turn to forging scripts. They turn to committing crimes, and they move into a street drug. And why is that? Because once you start and become dependent on hydrocodone or some type of opioid, you have to get it somehow or another. And if you can't get it from your doc, then you may have to turn to the street. And they're for sale on the street. A 30 milligram hydrocodone costs $1 a milligram. So a 30 milligram is $30. So if you have a 5 pill a day habit to sustain your need that your body's chemistry is telling you through your substance use disorder, then that's $150 a day that you have to come up with, one way or the other. And so substance use disorder doesn't take a weekend off. It's 7 days a week. And so it's $150 a day. And what's ironic is there's a lot of people, 5 pill a day habit is not a big habit. I've seen people with a 10, 20, 30, 40. I met one lady that had a 60 pill a day habit at the height of her addiction before she got treatment. And so where does that lead you? You can't come up with that money, and you're going to turn to something easier and cheaper, which is heroin. And that's why heroin is coming into our community. And then when you deal with heroin, realize that half the heroin that we're seeing in our state is inflicted with fentanyl. Heroin is twice as strong as morphine. Fentanyl is 50 to 100 times stronger than heroin. So heroin kills slowly. It slowly depresses your respiratory system until you asphyxiate yourself. Fentanyl works 50 to 100 times stronger than that. And it happens very quickly. And that's what our concern is fentanyl is causing so many deaths so quickly because they're unaware or they underestimate the power of fentanyl. Fentanyl, 99% of fentanyl is produced in China illicitly. Fentanyl has always been in America on fentanyl patches for prescribing, but it's a whole different kind of fentanyl. The fentanyl we're seeing is a powder fentanyl. And the other issue that we have with fentanyl and why it's so popular, if you look at cocaine, and these are dollar figures that come out from across the United States. Arkansas is usually on the low end of these because we're so close to the border, where a kilo, which is 2.2 pounds of cocaine, is $20,000. You may find it cheaper than that. I've seen it and bought it for $17,000 back in the day. A kilo of meth usually runs $10,000 or less. A kilo of heroin, $32,000. But a kilo of fentanyl, $3,500. So 1 kilo investment of $3,500 into a kilo of fentanyl, which you can buy over the internet if you know how to do it, can yield you over $1 million in profit. But I tell you this because one thing I want you to realize how potent fentanyl is. So the next time we're on break, when you go outside and you see a little sugar packet out there, a sweet and low package, look at the back of that sweet and low package and realize that that's 1 gram. And the sweet and low in there is consistent to the consistency of fentanyl, even in color. Pour out that packet on the ground, on the table, and look at how much that is, and there's not very much there. But that 1 gram, if it was fentanyl, is 1,000 dosage units. That means 1,000 people can get high off that 1 gram of fentanyl. But it also means that 500 people can die from that 1 gram of fentanyl. Last year, the U.S. government seized enough fentanyl to kill the U.S. population 3 times. That's how potent, how small a package or small a substance that is so deadly in our society that is leading these trends. And we're seeing polydrug deaths. And I say polydrug, these are mixtures. We're seeing fentanyl mixed into heroin. We're seeing fentanyl mixed into methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl combinations. We're seeing fentanyl marijuana combinations, and now liquefied fentanyl, where people are dipping their marijuana cigarettes or mixing a THC vaping cartridge into fentanyl to get that high. It's what's driving the deaths that we're having, the overdose deaths that we're having. We've had 3 waves of the opioid overdose, the synthetic opioids, which are our highest right now, which is our fentanyl and tramadol. Commonly prescribed opioids being number 2, and number 3 is heroin. But we're quickly seeing a 4th wave coming, which is stimulants going back to cocaine, methamphetamine, a lot of them attributed to mixing polydrug with fentanyl. And it's really, as strong as we're putting out awareness on opioids, people are starting to get that message and then reverting back to the drugs of abuse that we had before, like methamphetamine and opioids. Medication-assisted treatment, as we call it, MAT, works. And combined with a peer recovery specialist that you'll hear from our expert in the state here in just a few minutes, it really works. Because MAT, or medication-assisted treatment, can help that person that's opioid dependent get clean of the opioids. But then what do you do with that person once they get clean? Do you just put them back into an environment where they fail? Or do you pair them with somebody who has lived experience to teach them the skills, to walk them through the fire that they've walked through and show them how to successfully sustain techniques to sustain their sobriety? And what we found in our state that's worked, and we're trying to exploit it. And you'll hear more about that. But one of the problems we have in our state is having enough providers, whether it be nurses and doctors, to provide MAT. At our current rate, we have 305 total in our state, but they're only situated in about 39 or 40 counties. So in some counties, if you have a need to get treatment, you have to find a way to travel across two counties to get help. And that could be every other day. And it just doesn't work. So we're trying to build the capacity to get more providers on board in our state. And we've done a good job so far. In the last year, we've almost doubled the amount to 305 with some grant funding and education and good work of dedicated doctors through UAMS and other groups that we've been sponsoring on it. But we've got a long ways to go. There should be at least one in each county that is there for the people. But a lot of things bother that, or a lot of things inhibit that, for the fact that we have, sometimes I don't want to be the addiction doctor, stigma of the fact that I don't want those people in my clinic, or I'm not going to make a lot of money at it, and they don't really see the rewards of helping people recover. And we know that recovery works. Naloxone. So naloxone is an opioid antagonist. It allows somebody to breathe temporarily during an opioid overdose. It only works on an opioid. And it's such a simple process. It's much simpler than giving somebody CPR. And it is a really neat chemical way It doesn't treat the person, but it allows them to breathe, and it gives them time to get to medical help. Because like I told you, fentanyl kills very quickly. Where heroin, it may take somebody an hour, hour and a half for the breathing to stop. Fentanyl could happen in a matter of seconds. And so as quick as we can respond to them, we need to provide them with naloxone and get them help. And so we've been putting out a lot of programs in our state to try to deal with that and try to get people educated, not only on our first responders, but also in our community. You're going to see a big effort by the partnership that we have with the Criminal Justice Institute in my office to put naloxone into Pine Bluff. Right now, Pine Bluff Police Department's being trained. I think Pine Bluff Fire Department's being trained. We're about to put about 400 to 500 kits of naloxone into those first responders to be there to help this community. UAPB, Public Safety, has been contacted. We're in negotiations with them to get them up and going too, where they could have that in there. But you don't have to wait on that first responder. You yourself can learn how to administer naloxone. I put one of the couple tools that we put into place in 2015. We passed this Immunity Act that said that basically if somebody administers naloxone after they've been trained, are free from immunity of any civil penalty or any civil issue that they have for administering naloxone to try to save somebody's life. For first responders, for school nurses, your school nurses in this county have naloxone now thanks to this program and have been trained on it. In 2017, we passed this act that said pursuant to a statewide protocol, because naloxone a lot of times is that prescription you have to get and you have to convince your doctor and do that. But you can walk into a pharmacy and there's a standing prescription, a standing order, or a standing prescribing protocol is the proper terminology. For you to go in and buy naloxone and you can get it, you'd have to buy it or your insurance may cover it, but you can walk in there without a prescription and just say, look, I'd like to purchase naloxone. This is what it looks like. This is an overdose in East Liverpool, Ohio, and tell you the backstory on this. The child in the back seat was just got off a school bus. This is his grandparents that were waiting for him at the school bus. They decided to bump heroin, which had fentanyl in it. They shot up and they overdosed right there in the car. The school bus driver called it in. The local police, East Liverpool, Ohio Police Department pulled up and saved both these grandparents with naloxone. But I think this picture says so many things about what's going on in around our state, and especially here in Arkansas, and that's why I chose this picture. One, the ugly face of opioid overdose itself. It's not a pretty picture. It never is. Second, IV use drugs. Three, these are our seniors, and a lot of our seniors are raising our kids. A lot of our seniors have issues because of their medical issues with having a bunch of opioids, and the need to train seniors about being opioid free or opioid smarter about locking up their drugs. But at the same time, where are the parents? Are the parents working? Are they in jail? Are they incarcerated? Or are they even together? And then lastly, and most importantly, the impact on this child. And if I was to unblur this face, you would see a face of a child scared to death. And this is what we're facing. What we're seeing is ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and where will this child be 10 years from now, 15 years from now, based on this experience that he's growing up? Most likely may be a next generation of drug user because of the influences that he have, or lead them in hard paths that we're having to deal with now. So this picture really says, it's a picture of really 1,000, or to me, 1,000,000 words. This is an excerpt from our naloxone file from our first responders, and this is the actual page out of it where we're tracking what's going on, and you can see the drugs, the amount of naloxone that's being administered. And the neat thing about naloxone, if you administer it and you misdiagnose it, you didn't find any needle or you didn't find anything to indicate drug use, the person wasn't breathing, may not have had a pass, but you went ahead and tried naloxone and you misdiagnosed it, the worst you're going to give somebody is a wet nose. So it has no adverse actions on a person that you use it on. Naloxone's always been involved in our EMS, but this is a slide that I take real well, and I just got this from Department of Health, and I know Joe's in the back of the room, and thanks to the Department of Health for bringing us this slide, because to me, it's one of the most valuable slides for us to measure what's going on in the state. These are naloxone administrations by EMS, your ambulance service, your first responders that are out there responding to save people's life or whatever injury they have. And you can look on 17 and look at those numbers and then compare them to 2018. And these are where they administered naloxone to people. And you can see in almost every county in our state, it's doubled, tripled, or quadrupled the amount of naloxone in a 1-year period that's being administered, which tells us the level of opioid or overdose that we're seeing in our state. And I venture to say 2019 is not going to be much better.
Prescription painkillers, hydrocodone, morphine, codeine, fentanyl, oxycodone, heroin, tramadol, opioids. They may come in different forms and have different names, but they are all opioids. The misuse and overuse of these drugs has become an epidemic across the country and right here in Arkansas. So what exactly are opioids? They are narcotic sedatives that depress the central nervous system and reduce pain. Opioids are extremely addictive, and there are several ways addiction can start. Dependence on prescription medication for existing pain, continuing medication use after symptoms are gone, experiencing a major life event or trauma. Any misuse or overuse of opioids could be fatal. Overdose and drug interactions can occur accidentally. Synthetic opioids like fentanyl are especially potent and deadly. Fentanyl is 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine, and even the smallest amount could lead to death. To combat overdose deaths, naloxone was developed. Naloxone comes in a variety of forms and temporarily reverses the effects of an opioid overdose when it's given in time. Naloxone can be purchased at your local pharmacy without a prescription. By carrying naloxone, you could save someone's life, or even your own. If you witness someone overdosing, don't run. Call 911. You won't get in trouble, and you can't be arrested for simple possession if you call 911 about an overdose. You're protected by the Arkansas Joshua Ashley Pauley 911 Good Samaritan Law. The law provides immunity from arrest, charge, and prosecution for simple possession for those who seek medical assistance for others who are overdosing. Be a Good Samaritan. It's simple. Know the signs of an overdose. Confused or slow to respond, slow or shallow breathing, extreme sleepiness, cannot be awakened, nausea and vomiting, pinpoint pupils, blue or purple fingernails or lips. If you see someone with these symptoms, call 911 immediately. Tell the operator someone is overdosing and give the address. Your quick actions could save someone's life. It's time to put an end to the opioid epidemic. Download the Arkansas app for life-saving information and resources, including how to save a life with naloxone.
So that is a video health literacy program that we pushed out and was played in, I think, 19 theaters through the summer to help people understand the different programs that we had up and going with naloxone, from the Don't Run, Call 911 program, the Joshua Pauley Act. How many in here are familiar with the Joshua Pauley Act that they talked about? You know, just last year in most of the colleges and that I spoke at, hardly anybody knew about it. So we're really trying to get that effort out on that education and that valuable tool, because it's a travesty when somebody's having an overdose that a lot of times we run from it and we leave people sitting on the sidewalk within earshot of life-saving help, and those people lose their life because we fear reprisal from criminal prosecution on it. And this act was put in place where it wouldn't, where a person couldn't be charged with simple possession for just being there, participating even, but had the presence of mind to help their fellow person there. One of the things that we came up with was the Arkansas app, and I think you'll have a presentation on that in this conference. But we came up with, in partnerships with the Criminal Justice Institute, we developed this app because we got so many calls on our training, and it was overwhelming us because we had community groups, churches, different functions that wanted to learn how to administer naloxone. And how could we put this app in the palm of somebody's hand to teach them what they needed to do? And the neat thing about this is there's some neat buttons on there, but the most important button on there is the Rescue Now button. So if you have naloxone and you're around somebody that has an overdose, you can push that Rescue Now button. It'll ask you what kind of naloxone you have. You push on that, it'll help you dial 911 where you can get help coming to you, and then it'll walk you through the steps of how to actually save somebody. And when I first implemented a naloxone program at the Benton Police Department, one of the first saves we had was about 6 months into our program, and honestly, my officers got nervous and they got scared and they couldn't remember their training. And we had an older app that we were dealing with at the time, not as effective as this app. And they went to that app and followed those steps and saved that person just by walking through those steps. And so we developed this app in that mindset, but we expanded the app. And right now we're in design where the app actually speaks to the person. Instead of having to read the instructions, it will actually dictate them to you. And then also we expanded the app to add treatment, prevention, recovery information, what it is, where you can find it, what's available to you, and also the take-back stuff you see down in the lower part of the corner. So it's been a very valuable app. It's received national attention and received awards in our state for its design, and it's saving lives because we're seeing a lot of people using the app now to save another person's life. Prescription drug abuse has always been around. It's estimated that 4 billion prescriptions are written annually, and about 40% of them go unused. And so that led us in 2010 to develop a program called the Drug Take-Back Program. And we just had one last weekend. DEA has 2 take-back days a year in the state. And you can see the Arkansas statistics on top. I think the statistics on the bottom of it are Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and that's their totals of what they collect. And you can see the Arkansas program collects more, proudly, than other 3 states combined, basically on our efforts to do this. But we designed this not so much to collect drugs, even though that's one of the things that we do, or one of the mechanisms we do. We actually designed the program to teach communities to monitor, secure, and dispose of their medication safely, because we know that so many go unused and get into the wrong hands. They estimate that over 60% of the drugs that are abused, prescription drugs, are actually coming from our homes. One of the things we designed was the end the epidemic, and that's what I characterize it, not the epidemic, but the Opidemic is a name that we came up with. They try to depict this, but we actually came up with a website that has this prevention, recovery, and treatment programs in there, because it's so important for us to get these communications out into our communities to try to deal with a lot of the facets that go in. And one of the things you need to know about the Take-Back program, if you missed turning in your prescriptions, the most important thing is to lock them up like you would a firearm or jewelry or anything that you wanted to protect. But if you need to dispose of them safely. And you don't have to wait for a take-back day, because we've got over 220 24-hour take-back boxes in the state of Arkansas. There's at least one in every county in Arkansas somewhere. And you can go to this site, put in your zip code, and you can find the closest 24-hour take-back box to you and dispose of your meds safely right there. You know, it's ironic that we have more take-back boxes in a county than we do have a doctor that can treat somebody that needs help. So there's a lot of fixing. I guess there's a lot of splaining we got to do. But there's a lot of fixing that we need to do in Arkansas. So this is my number, this is my cell number, and if I can help you, and there's a lot of facets to this issue, a lot of facets that I didn't cover, but I want to leave you with this. You know, if we don't fix this issue in this direction that we're going to be the first generation not to leave it better for the next. Every generation that preceded us left it better in technology and advances all the way across the board for the next. We're going to be the first generation by our own greed not to leave it better for the next. Thank you very much.
to present you with a little certificate of appreciation.
Oh, thank you very much.
For coming today. And I guess after hearing all that, I guess we don't have to wonder if there's a problem in Arkansas. There is, but you know, we're blessed to have you and all the people who are doing things to make this epidemic a thing of the past. So we thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.